Well, I hope you have been enjoying what you've been hearing so far from Dr. Toby Taylor, not only a good friend, but also my family physician. And we would like to get right back into that discussion here on Life Talk, where we talk about the things that matter most in life. And currently, we've been talking about COVID-19. And of course, Dr. Taylor is on the front line of that in practice every day. And we've been talking with him about masks and social distancing and treatment and all kinds of possibilities for the future with this COVID-19 and vaccinations and all of that. So we'd like to get back into the conversation. So without any further ado, here is Dr. Toby Taylor on Life Talk. And so we just talked about death. So let's talk about life. What are treatments? Are there treatments on the horizon? Is there, another argument, and you can touch on this too if you want to. People are saying that, wow, that's not a lot of deaths. When you look at the millions of people in the world, it's not a lot of deaths. Of course, nobody, I don't think, wants to die from COVID, so I certainly want you to address any treatments on the horizon, what's working. But sure. Are the deaths significant compared to the number? Oh, in my opinion, yes, one death is too many, of course. But people are saying, wow, that's not a lot compared to the millions of people in the world.
Okay. Well, I think we're having the problem of our own success in prevention. What if we didn't do what we did? You would have huge numbers.
Absolutely.
So part of this is it's one of the problems with vaccines in general. So people don't see polio anymore. Why am I vaccinating for polio? I never see it. You prevented it by vaccine. Now in this case, we're kind of suffering from our own success in prevention by the things that we've done. And now people are saying, well, there's not that many cases. Right, because we have done a lot.
We've taken these steps.
You can tell how a society, how good a society is by how it treats its weakest.
Say that again. You can say that again.
The strength of a society is how it treats its weakest members. So what happens if we let this go? You and I we might get sick, but we'd probably be okay. There's a good chance we would kill off half of our older population. It's not a very good way to treat our elderly. Our elderly are our prized possession. They're wonderful, and yes, they're close. A lot of them close to death. But if they get COVID right now, we're going to shorten their life. And so to say, I don't want to do this anymore. You're right. If you're young and healthy, you might be able to roll the odds, get sick with it, get past it, and be fine.
Okay.
But if everyone takes that attitude, you are going to get your elderly sick, and most of them are going to die from it.
So again, it is carrying one to another. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Because it still may not be your grandma, but it might be your spouse's grandma, or it might be your children's grandma that passes away from this, or your friend's grandma. I mean, this is somebody's grandma and grandpa. And you know what? It's somebody's daughter and son as well. Because there have been some children, I know they're not as common to die from it or get it, but some children, and children do get this, right? Some children have died, and 30 and 40-year-olds, the rising population, right? Because they're kind of blowing it off a little bit. Are you seeing an increase in that?
The increase is happening 20 and 30s in infections. So, yeah, all ages can get it, but the younger you are, basically, the less severe the disease. So children do get it still, but most of the time it's a mild illness for them.
Mild illness.
The exception is below the 1 year of age. 0 months to 12 months old do have worse illness than older children. So that 0 to 1 year old is a vulnerable age for the illness, and then the elderly.
And then, so treatments, we know that they're working on a vaccine, but certainly there are some medicines available. Are they working? Are they effective? And you can pronounce them better than I can.
I think if I were to condense it down, probably the two most important breakthroughs have been remdesivir.
Okay.
Remdesivir is a antiviral that's been around for 10, 20 years. It's actually been trialed for the other COVID illnesses. So there is the COVID-1, so SARS. So back then we just knew it as SARS.
Okay.
That was SARS-CoV-1.
Okay.
And then there was the Middle Eastern COVID, and that not many people heard about. But there were two other COVID outbreaks.
Oh, okay.
In the United States. They were fairly localized. So there was experiments being done. remdesivir was a product of that.
Oh.
Remdesivir was also tried for the Ebola outbreak.
Okay.
And it didn't do a lot for Ebola. It did some for the other coronaviruses. It actually does help.
Okay.
And in the studies, when you looked at people who were sick in the hospital and they were on oxygen with pneumonia or they're in the ICU with pneumonia and they were put on remdesivir, the death rate was decreased by about a third.
Okay.
That was pretty good. I mean, a third decrease in death rate. They also looked at time to get better. So with remdesivir, the time to get better was cut down in about half. So
That's important.
if your time to recover is normally 10 days, with remdesivir is about 5 days. So remdesivir is a very promising one. The other thing is a simple thing, dexamethasone.
Okay.
It's a steroid. So this is an inflammatory response. So you get the virus and your body responds to it, and your inflammation will cause a pneumonia that's mainly inflammatory.
Okay.
So a steroid, systemically, dexamethasone that you usually get in a shot or IV, actually did a good job also at treating people who had COVID pneumonia. So those two have good studies and good trials.
And so does everyone get the pneumonia? Or some people get a COVID pneumonia, you're saying?
So when you get a virus, you can get anything from asymptomatic,
Okay.
sniffle, cough, to bronchitis, pneumonia, death. It
Wow.
can be anywhere in that realm. It just depends upon how much virus you get and how susceptible you are.
Okay.
Some people just get a large load of virus when they first get it, and it hits them really, really hard. So it can be any of those things.
And I think the final thing that I'd like for you to talk about is just the herd immunity. We were having this conversation a little bit before we taped this for you here, and we talked a little bit about how we recognize, I mean, I've been out of work since I retired from chiropractic. I've been full-time singing and speaking, and I've been out for 5 months now. And so we've talked about, you know, the emotional ramifications of that and all that. Maybe we'll have him on again for part 2, and we'll talk about other things. But we talked about that a little bit beforehand, about we recognize that there are people that need to work and feed their families, and then there's this concept of herd immunity. Do we get back out there and maybe perhaps get it and build immunity to it? Is that a good thing? Is that a possible thing? Does that happen?
So you got to understand where we are right now. So a few months back when New York did some testing randomly, they before their tests were very widespread, they went to like Price Chopper and did random blood screening antibody tests. You might remember some of those.
Yeah.
That was to sample the community for antibodies.
Okay.
And to just take random people and say, how many people have antibodies to this? The answer, in our area, about 3% had antibodies.
Is that good for this area or not?
Very good.
Probably not, right? I would imagine not.
I'll explain. Down in New York City, the rate was more like 15%.
Oh, okay.
So about 15% to 20% of all New Yorkers had New York City.
And we're upstate New York, for those of you watching.
Right. Had antibodies, which means that they probably had an infection or a symptomatic infection or asymptomatic. But up here is 3%. And Spain has done the same thing. They did studies, Boston area did studies, sampling the community to see how much they have. If you just kind of filtered out, which I did, probably the national average for more suburban areas is about 5%.
Oh.
And that's what most people are saying. Right now, if you're looking at herd immunity, 5% of the community.
Wow.
It's not enough to protect people. You really need to have in the realm of 60 to 90% immunity in the community to say it's safe enough to walk around and there's not that much spread around. So, if we just go with herd immunity, how long will it take us to get to 60 to 70%? Wow. We're at 5% after 4 to 5 months of this. How much death has happened with 5%? Pretty good amount.
Okay.
So if we would just wait on herd immunity, or maybe open up everything, let more people get sick, let more people get immunity by natural illness, you would still have that many more deaths. For every 5%, let's say, you get 120,000 deaths.
Right. That's what we have right now.
There you go. So every time we do that, we'll have that many more deaths. So it's not a great way to do that. It's not good. Some countries have tried to have openness about it and let natural immunity happen. It didn't go well.
Okay.
One other point on that. Some people will say, well, we've got to get the economy going, and we've got to stop doing this. And the damage to the economy is worse than the damage of the illness.
That's what people are saying.
It's kind of a fair argument, except for the fact that once we had a pandemic, the academic devastation was a given. No matter how you did this, whether you did it slowly with precautions or you just let it run through your community. If you let it run through your community, there would be economic devastation. If you open up again and let it spread again, there will be more economic devastation. So people are kind of mad, I think, because they see these masks and the restrictions, and they want the economy to open up again. There was no way around this. When it became a pandemic, economic destruction was a given, whether you did it slowly or quick the way we have. I would rather have economic destruction or economic damages, let's say. Devastation is kind of harsh.
Yeah.
I'd rather have economic damage and limit the amount of illness. If we just open it up, we're going to have economic damage and even more death.
And then eventually probably destruction.
Right. That's right.
Right. So it's a controlled fashion. So this is, people think they're being controlled, but they don't actually realize they're taking the control over this virus, aren't they? I've heard the argument, we're being controlled to wear a mask, we're being controlled. But really it sounds like from what we've gathered here today, that we're helping to take control back, to be able to get out maybe a little bit and do certain things, but just make a simple little precautionary step. And so it's kind of like the control is in our hands to try to prevent this. It's at least, that's how I see it. Right?
I am all for us getting out and doing it a little bit carefully. And I think this gives us some freedom. Once I wear this mask, I can go do things that I wouldn't otherwise do. I can feel like I'm not spreading it to other people. I don't want to go and spread this to people if I happen to get it and not know it.
Right.
So when I go out, I want to know that I'm protecting people. And it does give me freedom to go do things. I might look funny wearing this, but it doesn't bother me.
And I will say, I was hoping they would be here in time, but they didn't arrive yet. But I have ordered some masks for the hearing impaired and for the speech impaired. They have the open window here. Yes, it's very hard. People ask me all the time. It's near impossible. So we're supposed to be social distancing, and I'm wearing my mask going, what'd you say? Leaning into the people I'm supposed to be distancing from. But I turned my hearing aids up, or I've actually tried to learn how to read through the mask because the mask moves a certain way, so I'm trying to read mask now. But yeah, there are windows even for the hearing impaired, so I get it. It's not easy for me either. And I'll post a link for those in the description box below when I get those. I'm really looking forward to getting those. And maybe learn a little sign language during this period of isolation if you can. Paper, write it on paper. Speak louder. There's nothing wrong with that. Speak louder, but speak into your mask so those droplets don't go across the room. Doc, this has been wonderful, and I've learned so much, and I think the thing that I can't stop hearing in my mind is the strength of a society is in how they treat their weakness. Because Jesus says, I believe it's in the Gospel of Matthew, what you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me.
Right.
So I think we do need to be mindful, especially as believers, which again we both are, we need to be mindful and sensitive to the health and the welfare of one another. I love, one of the scriptures I used to read and quote all the time is in the third book of John, chapter 1, verse 2. It says that I pray that you would prosper in all things and be in health as your soul prospers. So health is your soul, it's mind, body, and soul. You need to be in health. You can't really prosper unless your mind and your soul are also healthy. And we're showing you ways that you can be healthy. So Doc, I really thank you for your time. Just thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for your wisdom. Not only that, but thank you for all your work to the community. He's a tremendous asset to our community. He and his family have done amazing things for babies, children, adults, the Christian community as a whole. And I think that's what we want to ask of you, is to do your part to make this community be whole again. Thank you for that, and we look forward to talking to you again on another episode of Life Talk. Doc, I wish you all the best, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
God bless.
Okay.